Nana lived a quiet life in Kumasi. She woke early, sold fabric in the market, and saved every cedi. Then a lawyer called. Her aunt in Accra had passed, and the will named Nana the sole heir. $11 million. The number sounded fake in her ear, like a song from a far place. She laughed, then cried, then went still. In 1 hour, her small life felt too tight for her skin. That evening Kojo came home with flowers he could not afford and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He hugged her longer than usual and kept saying, "My queen, my blessing, my miracle." He cooked jollof and made her sit while he served, wiping the counter twice, folding the dish towel like a hotel man. He spoke fast, his voice warm but thin. "You have done so much for us, Nana. You need air. Take a road trip. Just you. Go tomorrow. Cape Coast, maybe. Clear your head. I will handle things here." Nana watched him. Kojo had never liked drives. He feared bad roads and stops. Now he praised the open highway like a preacher. He kept touching her phone, asking if she had called the bank, the lawyer, the mechanic. "I told Kweku to check your car," he said lightly. "You know, to keep you safe." The money had found them. So had a new Kojo. Nana smiled back, but inside, a cold wind moved. She decided to pack slowly and listen harder. Nana left early with a small bag and a quiet heart, thinking the road would clear her head and the sea would wash the new number out of her mind, but the road did not care for plans. The sky was thin with clouds and the radio played songs she had always liked, and for a little while she felt free, the city shrinking behind her like a memory. Then the steering wheel tugged, once, like a hand on a sleeve. The car shuddered and the tires skidded on a patch that looked like oil but there was no rain. She braked, hard, and the world turned sideways. A truck horn screamed, lights cut through the gray, and the car slid as if the road had turned into a river. Trees leaned past in a green blur. Nana thought of Kojo, of the way he had smiled at dinner, of her aunt and the paper that had changed everything. A sharp jerk, a loud crack, then silence wrapped her. The car went over the edge and dropped into the ravine. She remembers nothing after the dark met the earth. At sunrise a motorbike rider found the wreck below, metal twisted, glass like cold stars. The police came, the ambulance came, neighbors craned over the ropes. The news moved fast. A reporter said the car had plunged off the cliff and the driver had not been found alive. Kojo read the words on his phone and a slow, calculated calm settled over him. He called the lawyer, the bank, his sister, and then the funeral home. He told the press he was devastated. He told neighbors she was a good woman and that she had been taken by a cruel accident. Within 3 days they held a funeral. Friends brought sugar and bread, and the church smelled of candles and strong perfume. Kojo arranged everything like a man performing a duty. There was no body. The police had said only pieces of the car remained and nothing that could be identified beyond doubt. They buried a small box of her hair and a folded dress, and the minister prayed for Nana as if she were present in the room. People cried for her. They wrote messages on her social media and placed flowers at the gate. Kojo stood by the grave with wet eyes and a hand that trembled just enough to seem real. He thanked everyone for coming and said the family needed time. Rumors passed like wine through the market. Some said the crash was a terrible accident. Others whispered about business deals and the sudden money. Nobody asked to look too closely. Grief can be a shield and a story can be easier when it ends with a coffin. As the days turned, the lamp at Nana and Kojo's house burned, her clothes folded in a wardrobe, her savings frozen in the bank. The town learned to say her name in the past tense. Kojo moved through the calendar with a strange new lightness, and the world around the grave kept spinning as if nothing had ever changed. They did not find Nana where the report said she had died. A boy who sold yams on the roadside saw clothes and a shoe in the bushes and climbed down with 2 men. They found her under a bush, bleeding and very still, her lip split and one arm bent wrong. Her eyes opened and closed like someone learning a language again. The villagers lifted her into a blanket with hands full of fear and kindness. They wrapped her warm and carried her past the road where people pointed and whispered. They knew Kojo. They knew the money. They knew how fast some men moved when chance came to them. No one called the police. They went to the small clinic behind the cocoa farm where the nurse, Alma, had a tired face and a steady voice. Alma shut the door, took Nana inside, and laid her on an old bed. The clinic smelled of medicine and boiled water. There were no white sheets fit for a funeral. There were only towels and hope. They fed her small sips of water and put poultices on her cuts. The villagers took turns watching at night. A woman named Esi brought porridge and sang softly until Nana slept without nightmares. A child braided Nana's hair when she could sit up. No one told the newspapers. No one posted a picture. They covered the windows with old curtains so no one would see a famous car owner hidden in a small room. Kojo came to the house where his sister said she would be, and he spoke to men in dark shirts at the bar. He asked about the mechanic with a voice that did not tremble. He gave money to the right people and smiled for the camera when he visited the funeral. He moved through both worlds without stumbling. One afternoon, as Nana slowly learned to hold a spoon, she heard voices outside the clinic. Alma had stepped into the corridor to talk with another nurse. They spoke low, thinking no patient could hear. Her husband paid the mechanic, one whispered, and the words landed on Nana like stones. This was not an accident. The other nurse breathed out, he wanted it to look like the road. They burned the brakes after. Nana's hands went cold. Her heart thudded like someone running. She listened while they planned how to hide the truth if anyone asked. They spoke of envelopes and threats and of a man who smiled as he signed papers. Nana felt something change inside her. Pain was still a map on her body, but a new fire lit under the ribs where fear had been. She tasted metal and resolve. The villagers closed the door when the nurses left and sat with her until the moon climbed. They whispered names of lawyers and old friends and ways to make the money safe. They promised to keep her alive and to keep her secret. In that small room, wrapped in old towels and the smell of strong tea, Nana chose to live. She decided she would not be a story finished in a coffin. She would learn every name of the men who had signed her death. She would walk again. 6 months after the funeral, the town woke to bright car lights and white ribbons because Kojo had married Alma, a woman everyone said was made for magazine covers. The wedding was loud and gold and larger than anything the town had seen. The hall smelled of perfume and new paint, the band played songs people knew from the radio, and guests wore shoes that clicked like small clocks. Alma arrived in a dress that looked like it held its own light, and she moved through the crowd with the kind of smile that asked for attention and got it. Kojo stood beside her with a suit that fit perfectly and a calm face that did not seem to carry the weight of loss the town had watched him carry at the graveside. People whispered that he had healed quickly, that money could fix many things, and they watched the couple with a mix of envy and relief. The ceremony had speeches, clinking glasses, and a photographer who did not stop clicking. Alma laughed at the right times and kissed Kojo in a way the cameras loved. Then she began to show off the jewelry. At first it was small things, a pair of earrings that flashed when she turned, a thin bracelet that slid down her wrist. Later she wore pieces that looked like they belonged to a queen. A heavy necklace with a pendant the shape of a crescent, a ring with a stone that caught the light like a piece of sky, and a brooch pinned to her dress that had been Nana's favorite. People leaned in close to look. They asked where Alma had found such beautiful things. She answered as if the story were a gift, "Gifts from my husband," she said, holding her chin high. She told the press the pieces were Kojo's way of honoring her, and the photographs of her wearing Nana's jewels spread across social feeds and in the papers. At the market, women pointed at the images and at Kojo's new house down the road where curtains were always closed now. Some guests whispered that the jewelry was tastefully chosen, a sign of new beginnings. Others did not say anything but looked uneasy, because they remembered the funeral and the empty coffin and the way Nana's name had been said in the past tense. Alma's confidence grew with each photo and each compliment. She posted ribbons of short videos showing the jewels up close, laughing and tilting her head so the light made the stones sing. People commented with hearts and with envy. Meanwhile, in a small clinic far from the city lights, the villagers who had kept Nana safe listened to the news and to the feeding frenzy of praise and spent coins. They felt anger like a seed in their mouths. They had wrapped Nana in towels and kept her hidden so she might live, and now the woman who helped bury her walked under chandeliers wearing what should have been Nana's. The town learned to clap for a new couple while some hearts counted the cost of that applause. Nana spent months in the quiet village clinic, slowly building her body back from the broken pieces. Her arm healed with a thin scar that ran like a river down her skin, her face carried new marks that the mirror would never erase, but her eyes grew brighter with every week. She kept her secret close like fire hidden under ash. With the help of a kind lawyer who owed her aunt an old debt, she began to move quietly. Papers were signed, accounts were checked, and small pieces of her inheritance slipped back into her control without Kojo or Amma knowing. The villagers cheered for her quietly when she managed her first steps outside the clinic, leaning on a stick but standing tall. Each night she thought of Kojo's hands, of the nurse's whispers, of the crash that was meant to erase her. Instead it had shaped her into something harder, something stronger. She was no longer the quiet woman who sold fabric in Kumasi. She was Nana, survivor, and her story was not finished. When the invitation to Kojo and Amma's charity gala reached her through a friend, she smiled for the first time in months. The event was to be the crown of their new life together, held in the grandest hall in Accra, filled with wealthy donors, cameras, and music. Kojo and Amma had prepared to show the world they were untouchable. That night the chandeliers threw gold over the crowd, glasses clinked, and Amma sparkled in Nana's old necklace, the same crescent pendant that once lay against her own skin. Kojo stood tall beside her, proud, charming, the perfect husband. They were laughing when the room suddenly grew quiet. The doors opened, and footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Nana entered, dressed in a simple but radiant gown, her scars showing under the light, her eyes steady, her walk slow but unbroken. Gasps swept through the crowd. Phones lifted high, flashes bursting. Alma froze mid-laugh, her glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. Kojo's smile collapsed as though it had been painted on and suddenly washed away. People whispered Nana's name like a prayer and a ghost in one breath. She walked forward, not rushing, letting every second stretch. The music stopped, the cameras turned, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Alma's hand gripped Kojo's arm hard, her face pale under the makeup. Nana's gaze never left them. She was scarred, yes, but she glowed with a strength that no jewel could cover. She reached the center of the hall, lifted her chin, and simply said, "Did you miss me?" The words cracked through the silence, and the crowd erupted in screams and shouts. The night that was meant to crown Kojo and Amma turned into the night they would never forget, the night the dead walked back in to claim her place among the living. The hall went quiet the moment Amma saw Nana at the door, and the sound that came from her was not a gasp but a raw, high scream that ripped through the music and the clink of glasses, a sound that made people drop their forks and look up like birds startled from a tree, and she grabbed Kojo's arm so hard her nails left marks in the fabric of his sleeve as if she were trying to hold herself to the world she had built with him. For a second she stood frozen, eyes wide and wet, mouth open like someone who had swallowed a lie and could not get it back out. Kojo's face changed too, but in a quieter way, his smile thinned, his jaw worked, and the careful calm he had practiced for months peeled away like paint. The big screen above the stage flicked on because someone at the gala knew the right button to press, and the room hummed with the blue glow of it. At first there was only static, and then a voice played through the speakers, Amma's voice, low and steady, the kind that had sounded like laughter in social media videos but now sounded hard and small, and everyone heard her say words that were meant to be private. Make sure the mechanic knows exactly what to do, she said in the recording. It must look like the brakes failed. No trace. You can handle the rest. In another clip she laughed and told Kojo, we need to finish this. She has to be gone. Think of the money, think of the future. Each voice note landed like a stone. People shifted in their seats. Phones rose, recording everything. Alma's hand went to her mouth. Her eyes darted to the stage, then to Kojo, then back to the screen as more clips played, her voice caught between the frames and the crowd hearing how she had pushed for cruelty and how she had promised time and comfort for Kojo if he did what she asked. The sound of her own words filled the room and made her small. The band stopped playing. Some guests stood up. Some cried. In the middle of the shock, something else happened, laughter that sounded broken, a few sharp calls of liar from the back, and murmurs that turned into shouts. Kojo tried to speak, to reach for Alma, to tell everyone it was a mistake, but his words fell like dry leaves. Alma's face fell into her hands and she shook as if cold, the bright jewels on her neck catching the light and looking suddenly very wrong, as if they belonged to someone else's grief. Nana watched them both, and even with her scars and her slow step she looked like the only person in the room who had the right to speak. When the last voice note ended the silence was thick and heavy, and the people who had laughed at the wedding photos now looked like judges waiting for a verdict. Alma's scream had opened a door and the whole ugly truth had walked through it in front of 100 strangers. The hall buzzed like a hive until the proof arrived and then everything turned sharp and quiet. Nana lifted a thin folder and the lawyer who had quietly helped her stepped forward with papers that showed names and signatures no one expected to see. Kojo's name signed away to her, mortgages and company shares moved in secret months before the crash, transfer papers, bank statements, and a will amendment that made Nana the true owner of the mansion, the businesses, even the accounts Alma had been spending from. The screen above the stage filled with clear documents, the camera panned close to the dates and signatures, and the crowd read them like a sentence that finished a long, ugly story. Kojo's face turned blue-white, Alma's smile cracked and fell away. People who had cheered their wedding now whispered about theft and falsehood. Uniformed officers in dark shirts moved forward, quiet and sure, and plainclothed detectives showed badges while a reporter shouted questions that nobody could answer. Flashbulbs popped like small suns. Hands reached for phones. The police read the charges aloud: fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and then they stepped in and put cold metal on wrists that had once flashed rings at parties. Alma cried and Kojo tried to say something that sounded like a plea, but microphones had already caught his earlier lies. Cameras followed them through the crowd as officers led them toward waiting cars. Nana watched, not as a broken woman but as someone who had been buried and had returned to dig up the truth. She walked past the marble columns and the shocked faces, her scarred hand holding the folder like a crown, and when she reached the front door she turned once so every camera could catch her face and she said, steady and loud enough that the microphones did not miss a word, "They buried me once. This time, I bury their lies." Then she stepped out into the warm night and the flashes kept burning as the story she had lived finally began to be told the right way.